Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. In honor of Black History Month, we thought we'd showcase some of the great defining Black characters the world has come to love.
Last year we tackled the MCU. So to match that selection of excellent Black characters, we're paying tribute to DC's roster of influential heroes, specifically their triumphs in television.
So without further ado, let's explore the history of Static on Black History Heroes.
Yeah.
Oh man, Dragon, let me just say, I went into a crash course with Static. I think I watched maybe upwards of, I don't know, 17, 18 episodes. Dragon, I want to just watch this whole series at this point. Like, I am such a fanboy for this show right now. I think this show holds up about as well as something like Hey Arnold does. I really do. I think that's a good comparison point because it's kind of like this urban sort of drama with character development, but it's still a very fun show and a very loose show. And I don't know, man. I'm head just without getting into any of the Black history stuff, which this show is absolutely ripe with. Don't get me wrong. Without getting into any of that, Dragon, I'm just head over heels with it just as a show. Like, I truly think this is one of the defining shows of the early 2000s.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a lot of love for Static myself. I do. You know, it's yeah, it was Static was, no pun intended, kind of lightning rod for a lot of stuff. You know, it really was. Where Static Shock has very interesting. The show itself has a very interesting story, which we'll get into, and it kind of like worked its way into the. It's one of the shows that worked its way into the DCAU, and that in itself is very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, basically fits in the quality of the DCAU. DCAU essentially has never really had a bomb of a show, and I think Static is the show's so good it worked its way into the DCAU, and I think it kind of speaks to itself. But even as a character, Static is a ridiculously good idea, and I've always loved the visual of Static, and I love the show, and that was kind of my bridge into it. Then of course finding out that Static wasn't just created for television, finding out he's a comic book character, and he's kind of indicative of not just like kind of some great stuff in animation, but as well as just kind of, again, he is kind of the story. Static in essence is kind of the story of Milestone Comics, which again is going to be a big linchpin of what we're going to be talking about here as well.
Oh yeah.
A lot of interesting stuff to talk about with Static. So basically, we kind of saved the best for last here, folks, on Black History Heroes.
Because I feel like, again, going back to my Hey Arnold comparison with the show, Hey Arnold wasn't afraid to tackle serious issues, and that's one of the big reasons why we kind of attached to Hey Arnold so much. It's one of the big reasons it holds up really well. And I feel like the exact same thing can be said with this show. You know what I mean? This show is... it's just I don't know, I just feel like episode after episode there's just all these heavy hitters, and they all just hold up phenomenally well. None of them feel preachy. They're very consistent with the character. I just think it's just such a great, just all the message episodes tried in, they all work so well. I'm kind of enamored by the thing.
You got to remember, Tiki, that's something that really, on the whole, the DC really tried this. They learned their lesson in the first season of Batman. Usually, when they tried going for a message, it didn't pan out that well. So they were really skeptical of doing that. So again, Static again kind of swung for the fences on that one. It really worked in their favor. It's one of the few shows that really kind of didn't shy away from the PSAs and the message episodes. And
the show's got its heart on its sleeve, but in the best and most endearing of ways.
And Static, one last thing on the show, because I think we're kind of like gilding the little too much here, but let me put it this way. The Static show holds up tremendously well on a rewatch, maybe even better than it did in the first watch. The first watch you're watching because it
really does, man. I mean, that's the thing. It's like I watched. I didn't rewatch the whole show, but I kind of got like a taste of each of the 4 seasons, and yeah, in between, I could kind of connect the dots with my memory of the nostalgia and, and Richie becoming Gear and everything like that. But yeah, it very much is a a saga. It really is throughout all 4 of the seasons.
Oh yeah. All right.
So,
So that said, let's break it down.
okay, where do you want to start, Dragon? What's the first card on the docket?
Let's start with the creation of Static. So Static, of course, begins his first appearance is Static number 1 from 1993. You're the Phantasm, I like to call it. So Static has a very interesting story, which I believe you've become privy to recently, right?
Yeah. I watched the documentary TV series.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you better explain that better than I did.
Yes, in case anyone's scratching
that well.
in case anyone's scratching their heads at that, to be if you're really curious, there's a really wonderful series that I really hope is coming back. I hope it's like part AMC. They've been doing a lot of miniseries lately. Like they've done 3 miniseries like this, and my hope is that they're going to do part 2s to each of these because I want to say the series order was for 12, and they've only showed 6 per series or so.
Uh-huh.
And basically, what they've done is like there's 3 series. It started with the secret. It started with Robert Kirkman's Secret History of Comics. The creator of The Walking Dead. He basically kind of got all the basically kind of examined the history of comics, and each episode is in a different style and kind of covers a different section in the history of comics, and they're all very distinctly different and really well done. The first one brought me to tears. It was so stuff I never knew about Stan Lee. It just moved me to the like. There was basically it's done in the style of the. It's practically done in the style of the Spider-Man '60s animated show, where it's really that really choppy animation style. It's like pretty much like it's like a motion comic almost. And it's again stuff I never knew about. They bring in Sean Howe, who basically like he's like the like all the kind of trying to think of the analogy is, but the basically like even like all sides of the Rubik's cube, if you will. When you look at Marvel, he did the Secret History of Marvel book, which shows even like the unsunny sides of the Marvel coin, if you will.
Basically, the stuff that would be in a dramatic Stan Lee biopic.
Exactly. So basically, Sean Howe's involved in this, and he basically kind of retold certain events. Basically, it's kind of I found what I was looking for. Warts and all. It's a warts and all take. So you have like a warts and all take, but of course we see the great stuff of Stan Lee. But again, it's a story about the formation of Marvel, but really what it's about is Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. But anyway, what I'm getting at there is that was the first installment. That was tremendous, and they had me on the hook, man, because they do Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Then they do Wonder Woman, which again is done in live action with recreations, which given the biopic on the William Moulton Marston Wonder Woman, that's very interesting.
That was like one of my top 10 movies of that year. That was
and I saw it. It was good. I keep meaning to rewatch it, but because again, I kind of got sidetracked because of this thing that came out, because this was also really good. And then the third one's probably my second favorite. It's about Superman. It's about how Neil Adams saved the creators of Superman. That's one of the best stories in all of comics, about getting justice for creators. Anyway, so the point is, the fourth one's about the 9/11 stuff with the comics, which is really some powerful stuff as well. About of course, you and I, we dedicated that whole episode talking about the Spider-Man issue.
Oh man, that's some powerful stuff for sure.
They cover that as well, and of course the fifth installment is basically what brings us to why we're even talking about why we're going on this tangent about it. It's called The Color of Comics, where it's about essentially it's Black history in comics in a way. It's the best way of putting it. It's about covers the milestone years, which relates to Statics. Basically, it relates to covers Black Panther, which came as the first black superhero in comics. Then we get to we cover Luke Cage, but of course, importantly, we cover Milestone. Milestone is huge in regard to basically everything we're doing on Black History Heroes is somewhat. I can't remember if we've been. I don't know if we did this. I think we did Black History Heroes before that show happened, before that episode happened. But I don't know. I can't, for the life of me, I can't recall. I mean, if you look at the dates, you probably.
I mean, the episode is so good that I feel like us dedicating a whole podcast to that in general in Black History Month, just kind of doing it beat by beat, would be very appropriate. It really is one of those documentaries that stands on its own.
Absolutely. So the point is, it's like in a series of like hour-long documentaries that are all really good, and I really hope you're gonna get more of them because it even covers the medium, and they've been doing that on AMC with like science fiction with James Cameron. They have like one guy to kind of interview people. That's the gag, and they have Eli Roth with the History of Horror, which I'm not crazy about all the episodes, but I like them. But anyway. Point being, we cover Milestone. Milestone is the reason I bring it up. So Milestone, we learn the story of Static and essentially kind of basically DC, which again, hence the whole dedication of this Black History Heroes Month. Of course, we covered DC heroes, and I think there's and DC was really made big by Milestone. Don't get me wrong, we had the John Stewart. John Stewart was kind of the very beginning for them. So you had John Stewart and Black Lightning. They were really the big premier Black heroes at DC. But believe it or not, outside of DC, you had Milestone. So Milestone. Basically, Static was created by all the founders of Milestone, which is why I'm kind of covering the company broadly here. So Milestone Comics was founded by Dennis Conwin, Derek Dingle, and Dwayne McDuffie, the great Dwayne McDuffie, and Michael Davis. So these four guys, essentially, these were kids who grew up wanting to see more representation in comics. Like these were the guys. These were like essentially the Miles Morales is kind of basically the Statics and Miles Morales and kind of your black comic book reader that was really underrepresented. Because again, before John Stewart came along, you'd be reading comics and you'd be wondering, well, where's your representation? Before that, Tiki, as we mentioned, you had a certain Spirit character in comics that was not really flattering as a portrayal.
Oh boy, yes.
So again, that was basically kind of.
I feel like that is the thing with this side sector of DC. It was like, okay, we need to make that image disappear. Like we need to wipe it off the map. We need to really turn around Black history. And that's a thing, Dragon. That's just kind of like the basis of what this Black History Heroes thing is all about. It's like these characters that came from this line are so iconic that I feel like we owe a debt to everything that came afterwards, specifically characters like Miles Morales.
Absolutely, and the point being, I mean, Black Panther. So basically, the story of Milestone is this: so you have these four guys who, again, they're working in comics, or they're kids aspiring to work in comics, and the big thing that inspires a lot of them in the first place, I believe, specifically Dennis Conwin, is Black Panther. Basically, the Milestone is founded on the friendship, if I'm recalling correctly. It's really founded on the friendship of Dennis Conwin and Derek Dingle, and then eventually Dwayne McDuffie. They were kind of like the trio before it becomes a kind of a quartet. But those two in particular, Dingle and Conwin, they were the guys who were trading comics with each other. And of course, they were stupefied by Black Panther. Black Panther again was a huge thing in comics. He was like you had a guy. One of the coolest things about Black Panther is his first appearance. He takes out the Fantastic Four. That's still so awesome when you really think about it. Shows up, and he's an African king. He's this very this prosperous hidden from everyone else because they're afraid the world's going to do terrible things with the technology, given the state of the world. It's tremendous. So that inspires them. Like why, in their youth of like they grow up, they see like other characters like these are good. But wouldn't it be great to see kind of us represented? Like the comic book reader, kind of like what if we saw more diversity, more Black characters, not just Black, but like Black, Hispanic. Let's see the underrepresented populations in comics, see them represent. So they work their way into the industry. Some of them get to work on Black Panther and Luke Cage, respectively, and just other things as well. Like The Question, I think Conwin was the artist, by the way, like one of the founding guys. He was an artist, and you had McDuffie, a writer, and like they were all. Like I believe some were inkers and betweeners. They all inkers more accurately. So I think they're all just in different parts of the medium. So they're working comics for a number of years, maybe a few decades in some cases. So 1992 rolls around. They ask themselves, they're having like a lunch or something. They're all talking. It's like, you know what? Why don't we do that? Like nothing gets done unless you do it yourself. So why don't we kind of have the do ourselves approach? We're like, we feel underrepresented in comics? Why don't we do that? And we know how to draw a book. You know how to write a book. Let's get together. Let's do it. And essentially what they did is they pitched, again, not their own company, because there's crazy and then there's really crazy. And I'm not saying that's impossible, but I'm saying it would have been really hard. I mean, ask Floyd Norman how he started his own animation company. That was, that was difficult in itself. With Vignette Films and the whole shebang there. But the point being, the DC at this time, they had imprints. Now, Tiki, an imprint is like Vertigo, where it's under, like DC is, think of it like Pixar and Disney in the early years, where Disney would distribute the Pixar films. That's essentially what an imprint is. Where DC was Disney, and they would release the Pixar film, which in other cases have been like Vertigo comics. Vertigo being Swamp Thing and a number of other characters. And essentially they pitched another imprint, which was Milestone. which again would be kind of like let's be basically the most diverse comics you've ever seen in your life. Let's do kind of black heroes from the ground up, like the heroes like we would draw in our youth. So let's do books about those characters we would come up with. Like, what if we made official books about them? And again, they'd be released through DC, and essentially they pitched that to Paul Levitz, and they got the go-ahead. So you're probably wondering where Static come into play with all this, because we're talking about Milestone Believe. There are a number of great Milestone characters, but we don't want to dedicate all of it to them because we might explore them further down the line. It's like Icon in particular. Icon's a really cool character we might have to get into at some point. But point being, Static in particular. So Static was a concept from Dwayne McDuffie's days at Marvel. As I mentioned, they all worked in different, like they worked under like DC and Marvel respectfully. And Dwayne McDuffie had a number of really great, he did Damage Control. Remember in the Spider-Man Homecoming we had Damage Control?
Yeah, sure.
That was Dwayne McDuffie. He came up with that.
Right.
So essentially, while in his Marvel days, Dwayne McDuffie had formulated an idea for a character. He was getting ready to pitch to Marvel. I don't know if he ever pitched it to him, but he had this idea in his Marvel days about it, kind of a young Spider-Man inspired character who would kind of mirror the founders, in their youth of let's kind of see what if Peter Parker was a black kid who read comics and he was a sci-fi fan, like a number of readers. We usually don't see that. We usually see either as a Marine or an architect. In the case of John Stewart, we see him as a scientist, which don't get me wrong, kind of speaks to kind of your smart reader idea, but still not an average Joe. We don't have an average Joe that reads comics or watches movies in comics. So that's kind of where let's do that, and let's make him kind of a Spider-Man archetype, and not a spider shtick. Let's give him an electricity shtick, and so Dwayne McDuffie had kind of the model, and then they all just kind of chipped in with some ideas and looks and everything, and then became Static. That's the origin.
Yeah, nice. Okay.
All right.
Alrighty then. Legacy, right?
Yes, let's talk legacy. Let's talk about the big kind of prolific claims to fame that Static has. Like kind of the things like when you think Static, don't wrong. We think of one of the go-tos is Static Shock, of course. I mean, beyond that, Static has a number of things under his belt. So let's talk about that.
I mean, if I'm being honest with you, Dragon, the show is sort of the legacy for me. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure the comic was important for sure. But when I think of legacy, I mean, just for me growing up, look, as you know, Dragon, I didn't watch nearly as much Kids WB as I watched, let's say Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon. But I got to admit, I did watch my fair share of Static Shock, and something drew me into it. And rewatching all these episodes now, and just kind of really getting a sense of the history of the character and all these special message type episodes. I really think, as I was kind of pointing to earlier, Dragon, I really think the very special episodes are oddly kind of the root of what makes this show special. It's the rare show that can do those episodes and do them right and really have them hit home.
Yeah. And again, as we mentioned before, you also have again the retroactive thing, especially kind of post Spider-Verse, which we're kind of doing this season, and it's a post Spider-Verse world. Spider-Verse Oscar-winning, animated movie. It's getting there, man. People are respecting it. It's very well deserved. It's a great movie. We have basically, so again, in essence, Static was Miles Morales before there was a Miles Morales. I mean, that he's very directly modeled after Spider-Man. And again, kind of made it as the man on the ground version of Spider-Man. Cool. And so he kind of has that claim to fame. We also have again McDuffie going for kind of a contemporary take on that Spider-Man archetype. It's basically kind of a modernist take on a black teen character. It's like we don't have to worry about kind of the old trappings of some certain spirit characters. We can just he's a kid in the 90s.
All right. Well, that's yeah. I hear you.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's kind of an update. But the point is, every character was kind of stuck. I don't mean to keep going back to that without saying the character's name, but we have usually when you'd have a character as sort of a background character is very much kind of in the shadow of the other characters. We just have kind of your main character is kind of is contemporary. Of course, let's see. So we have with the animated series itself, which again, I don't want to undersell the animated series. I don't want to dedicate everything to the animated series, but it's the fact that the animated show, again, was my foray into the characters. Again, the animated series really, believe it or not, far eclipsed the popularity of him as a comic and kind of brought him into the comics years later. So the animated series is pivotal in all the stuff for Static. But the animated series, it performs so well that as I was kind of hinting at. So this show, they basically tested it for a season, Tiki. So they do Static Shock. They basically kind of put it out for like a 13 episode season. Now I could be wrong here, but I'm pretty sure this is the way it went. Where the show was just going to be like kind of like something on the WB was going to obviously owned by DC, therefore it was kind of a DC show, but it wasn't officially in the DCAU. It wasn't like you'll notice here and there in the first season. I think they have like references to like they're kind of retcon now, but like references like Clark Kent being Superman, which obviously if they were in the DC universe, they could make those references.
Right.
And
right.
that was the caveat, and Tiki, that's the way it used to be with the imprint books as well. Like Vertigo and Milestone, they couldn't take place within the DC universe. So Static was never intended to like ever meet these other characters, but the show was so good, it worked its way into the DCAU. Like the first episode of the next season is the Batman crossover because the show did that well. Think about that, man.
Yeah, I hear you.
And broadly, just to piggyback off that, broadly in the context of everything, Static was so popular, not just the animated show, but the whole thing. Static was so popular. Not only did years later did it kind of bring together DC and Milestone, but in its past, Static was such a popular brand, was such a popular book. Again, was kind of part of the groundbreaking kind of Milestone movement. Is that it caused a rift between DC and Milestone. So things were, again, if we were living in a world where back in the day, DC and Milestone couldn't reference them because it was just kind of a company policy. But then there was a point where you really couldn't reference it. And Milestone essentially went the way of the dinosaur because they kind of butted heads with DC over an issue, and it really hurt their relationship. And essentially, Milestone didn't get like canceled out of vengeance. They didn't get kind of shut down out of malice or anything. But essentially, there was the infamous, best way to phrase this, the infamous condom cover.
Oh boy! Oh no!
So essentially, here's.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, right. Oh god.
So, folks, I love Dwayne McDuffie. I think we all do, and God rest his soul. And Dwayne Duffy left this world way too young. I mean, way too young. We'll get into it one day if we ever do it. One of these days, we're gonna do a Black History Heroes on kind of some like kind of real life icons, and we're definitely gonna include Dwayne McDuffie along that line. I'll have it no other way. But the thing with Dwayne McDuffie, and the thing I respect the heck out of the guy for, is he stuck to his guns and his characters. He felt something for the Static character, and essentially what happened was, there was a cover. Again, he kind of viewed Static as his Spider-Man in many capacities, and Static was a big book at the time. And there was a cover where Static was, it wasn't like a sex scene or anything, but he was kissing his girlfriend on the cover. And there were like wrapped there were like a box of like I don't know, so there were condoms on the floor that wrapped up like again advocating safe sex essentially, which again is a good moral.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, while this was happening, there was the whole. I don't want to get to all of the nitty gritty of it. The point is, this was censored on the cover. They didn't want to show condoms on the cover of a comic book. So they didn't want to be super honest with things. So they basically censored it without Milestone's go ahead, and they basically kind of like blacked out the rest of the cover. It's like a circle amongst the two of them, just making kissy faces. Well, the whole rest of the scene was kind of blacked out, and basically they kind of got into a whole brouhaha over it, and they kind of pulled a bait and switch with the cover. So essentially the cover that wasn't supposed to get out got out, and DC was really mad at Milestone for this. And again, this caused a rift within the company of Milestone because basically they all blamed Dwayne McDuffie for this. And again, it's like, well, you had this. Why'd you have to, kind of get us all in trouble for your refusal to compromise? So it was a big thing, but that speaks to what Static was, Tiki. Static broached a lot, even in the animated show, but as well as the comic. The comic and the show reflected both of this, where they broached relevant topics like racism, mental illness, drugs, gangs, and even homosexuality. Because Tiki, I don't know if you know this, in the comics, Richie's supposed to be gay.
That's interesting, Dragon, because I did know that, and I have some things to say about that relationship just in general. I think they handled it in a really mature way in the show where they couldn't exactly address it in the show, but they did a number of things with Richie that kind of were progressive in their own right. And that's one of the things I respect about this show is that it's not just Static. It's basically like everyone involved has a great character arc, even down to like Rubber Band Man. You know what I mean? Like characters who would be crazy, loony side characters in other shows get developed so well, and I just have such admiration in that regard.
Absolutely. Again, there's this. They broached a lot of stuff, and again, they kind of honored the book in way there. But again, they kind of broached even more kind of diverse things, like again, like things of Rubber Band Man and so on and so forth. They kind of one of the things that are never talked about, you know.
Mhm.
So also a little fun fact. Here's kind of a cool Black History nod here, where Static's name, Virgil Hawkins, is actually based on a real guy. There's a guy by the name of Virgil D. Hawkins, and so I'm not botching this. Essentially, he was trying. I think it was in like '69. It was like in the '60s, so kind of during the heights of things, where he tried to get into a law school, and he was denied access to a law school because again because of his race, which was very unfair and was very very skewed. And again, hence again, so the whole like kind of the educated kind of an educated character like Virgil Hawkins. So again, it's kind of a vague correlation where the history of the name comes from there, I guess.
Mhm.
All right.
Yep, yep.
Let's see. And of course, okay. Look. Sorry, 1 second. Oh yes. So of course, this lastly with the legacy is that the show lasted 4 seasons. One really impressive thing with the series is that the series lasted 4 seasons. I'm going to bring that up a little bit later on, but just for now, it lasted 4 seasons, and it faced the same problem that all the shows like that came up now. The infamous like 2 season dilemma of all shows now, right?
Of course, but yeah, yeah. That is kind of a bummer, and then with this, it was just it was just allowed to thrive, It was and like I said earlier, Dragon, this show, watching it, even not watching all the series, even just watching like some of these big pivotal episodes, you can tell that they had a roadmap to it.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, they all face the same problems that we're still facing today with things. And again, thanks to things like the DC streaming service or your
Mhm.
Netflixes or your petitions and everything, some shows are finding their way back to the airwaves in some form or another. But again, they all face the same issue of like essentially it's a money issue. Of like if you don't merchandise your show, if you don't have merchandise that's being sold, your show's going to get canceled within 2 seasons or less if you're unlucky. And
Mhm.
Static had that same problem. That's eventually we got it ended. But still, even with that, it had enough strength to it that it lasted 4 seasons, which is
What do you
remarkable.
think of my Halo comparison, by the way, Dragon? Because that is really just like, to me, it's the inner city vibe. It's the fact that the show feels very lived in. The fact that the characters develop at a very naturalistic rate and pace. What do you think? I'm curious about that comparison from your point of view.
I agree with that comparison for the most part. I see a lot. Mainly, I get a Halo vibe, particularly from Virgil and Richie's friendship. I definitely got a bit of that.
Definitely, definitely.
Where we kind of follow our character. Virgil, of course, being always kind of our main character of focus, and you learn something back. It's kind of like what if you had a show where primarily it was like most of the Static episodes are Static meets a new Bang Baby, meets a new kind of meta of the week. And that's another legacy component too, where again this kind of has the Flash beat too. Like we see this all the time. Where
Uh-huh.
again the Flash's formula is derived from the Static show, technically.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I do love that the Big Bang kind of really was the setting up off point for this whole comic universe, Dragon. That's some really good deep storytelling there.
It was one of my favorite things about Static Shock as an idea, Tiki. I love the Big Bang so much. I love the Big Bang.
There's one Big Bang that I don't like, but we're not talking about that Big Bang.
Right, we're not talking about that. Okay, my point is seriously, look, the Big Bang in Static is a tremendous story idea that I think is just it's such an ingenious idea. Again, we've seen it replicate again now retroactively. You know where the idea kind of comes from. We have other shows like you have your Smallville. Again, Smallville is probably getting off at the same time, so maybe not Smallville, but again, definitely the Flash. The Flash is definitely kind of some vague fingerprints of Static in there.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Especially season one of the Flash, where it's all about the
Especially
dark.
like by the whole thing with the Flash, where like by the end of the Flash, everyone had powers and a suit and everything.
Exactly, it's pretty much again like the idea, particularly even if you don't agree with even someone doesn't agree with the Big Bang thing, you always have the meta thing because again, meta specifically is meta was a term that I became familiar with through Static. That's where I first heard the term metahuman. That's where I heard it from. And I imagine a lot of people might have had the same experience with that.
Hmm.
Anyway, so yeah, I guess that's Yeah, good. Oh, and with your hair on comparison, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. But yeah, your hair on comparison, like it feels like almost like a meta of the week thing where like Arnold comes across like a new mythical, like kind of an urban legend character that Jared will kind of speechify about. You know, we're gonna meet like, okay, so we meet Stoop Kid, we meet Pigeon Man, and there's definitely a quality of that where Static runs into a meta and he kind of learns something about himself or kind of learns about the meta, or he kind of reaches them in some way, shape, or form. You kind of have some stories about people who are, again, there's definitely there's a Hey Arnold quality, but maybe not to the, like, not every episode's a Hey Arnold episode. Even like, I see your point though. I think I see your point.
Not every episode's a Hey Arnold episode, but the ones that you sent me, you know, the really big pivotal ones, I'd say those are Hey Arnold quality at the very
sure. Then yeah, that by example, yeah.
All
right.
All right.
Speaking of the Big Bang, let's talk about the Static's intro. Let's talk about kind of the big origin of Static and how it kind of compares to the book, and basically let's talk about the origin itself.
Yeah, well, you're more familiar with the book, but I do like how in the show they do, you know, in the book it basically launches like a whole comic universe, and in the show it's more low scale, but they do very much play it straight and to the point, and it is very similar to how it acts in the book. So I like that.
So let me tell you this. So it's essentially, here's the thing. I don't want to, I realize maybe a compare and contrast is not really apropos here, because it's only like, here's the thing, they ridiculously adapted it so well in the animated show, because again, there's only a few details they kind of changed and they simplified per series, where it was kind of redeveloped, you know, for television. It was kind of redeveloped and altered for television. That's the main. They kind of have to soften it a little bit, but all, it's pretty much as it is in the book, which is really cool. Where, let me put it this way. So, a reason for this might be Dwayne McDuffie. Again, as I mentioned, he and Milestone were having kind of a difficult they kind of had a breakup they were kind of getting over when Static came out, because they really Dwayne McDuffie and again let's Dennis Conway, they were really kind of on the outs, and they kind of reconvened over the Static animated show. And because of that, Dwayne McDuffie was kind of gradually involved in the development process. Again, like he got involved in it, like, but you know, he's very he wasn't involved from like the series Bible of it all, from the very like the point of creation, where it's just kind of like, you know, he created the character, therefore we have a blueprint, so we're going to create like how it's going to go, and then we'll bring Dwayne McDuffie on to kind of help out throughout the series in places. So, and they kind of mended. They had a professional relationship instead of a personal relationship on that series, and that's kind of how it went. But anyway, I don't want to dwell on that too much. If anyone wants to know more about that, again, watch The Secret History of Comics. But what I'm getting at is that the origin is pretty much verbatim. Where you know, he's Static's in you know, where Virgil's in school, he's bullied by F-Stop. Same guy, just looks better in the animated show, in my opinion. I think all the designs in the animated show are better, but that's just me.
Dragon, that's the thing. I love that Kids WB in that era did have a distinct style to it, much like everything else. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What I feel like animated shows in general are missing. Like back in that era, we knew what was a Cartoon Network show and what was a Nickelodeon show and what was a Kids WB show.
Yeah. So let's see. So you basically, like, I think the height of Kids WB with design, Tiki, was Batman Beyond. That was the height of their design.
Yeah, I would agree. That was like the Blade Runner of Kids WB.
That was the best looking show they had on WB. But then basically Static, to me, and I'm not trying to knock Static here, I'm just saying the show was in that same DCAU vein. Where again, like Bruce Timm wasn't involved in this show. I want to make that clear. Again, this thing became a DCAU project, but again, wasn't therefore he had no Bruce Timm fingerprints on it. But again, that shows the quality of this. Where again, it's drawn in a style that can kind of stand shoulder to shoulder with the greats like that. And again, there's a bit of a Kids WB softness to it. It's like if you look at Challenge Showdown or something like that, you kind of see there's a bit of light and softness to the world. And again, over time, they kind of became more and more DCAU-like, which was kind of an improvement in my opinion. And you know, the point is, like, it all worked out for the best is what I'm getting at in terms of design. But anyway, so back to the origins. The origin, he was bullied by F-Stop, who eventually becomes Hot Streak. Basically, he was bullied in school in the exact same way. It was like thrown harshly against this locker. Man, that locker throw always gets me. It's just like thrown against that locker. Again, real world scary bullying, folks.
Yeah.
You know, and basically, it erupts into this gang war with between two crews, between F-Stop's crew, Francis's crew. Again, never trust a guy named Francis, folks. If we learn anything,
I think if TV has told us anything, it's that, Dragon.
Never trust Francis. Basically, Francis and if you see a guy named Francis, run the other way.
God.
So especially if they look like Ed Skrein, run. Anyway, so the point is Francis and Wade, the leader of a kind of a rival gang that kind of has been sticking up for Virgil and kind of like intimidating Francis. Basically, Virgil gets in the middle of a gang war by accident, and he's basically Wade sticks up for him. Therefore, he's kind of for his own protection, he's involved in the crew, and this leads to him going to the docks, where basically they're about to have like a big, again, essentially a shootout. Again, Tiki, imagine how groundbreaking this is. On Kids WB, you have the implication of a gang war with gun violence in it.
And that's just the first episode.
Yes! I mean, we have, and Tiki, again, this is so trippy too, because again, like a few years before Batman Begins, we have essentially a big Batman Begins gun moment where he takes the gun, he's horrified by it, throws it in the water.
Sure.
And anyway, so we had Virgil's big moment with the gun, which always struck me. And anyways, basically he kind of realizes, oh my god, what am I thinking? And he tries to get out of there. And then the Big Bang happens. And again, this is the main difference. Where in the comics it was the cops show up, but it was like more of a sci-fi robot idea. But that doesn't matter. The point being, the tear gas itself was laced with the Big Bang chemicals. It was like kind of an irresponsibility of government situation where again there was like
right.
They were trying. I believe the implication was that they were trying to maybe dispel the gang problems in a more permanent solution with like some altered gas. It was either that or irresponsibility. The point being that it was like the tear gas specifically was, but the animator did a great thing. I thought it was even better, where it was actual guys in the helicopters or basically actual cops, and they were dispelling the gangs with tear gas, and the tear gas was on a dock full of like this chemical shipment of the Bang Baby gas. But basically, the tear gas like kind of set it off, and it caused this big explosion, which I thought was a lot better.
Yeah, I do think that makes a lot of sense, and like I said, it is a very it's a good hook for the series. It really does kind of get you into it. It really draws you in. I don't know, man. Just the idea of the Bang Babies in themselves. I love that whole idea because it's almost kind of like a more grounded and feasible version of what the X-Men and the mutants turned out to be. Like a version of that with less story baggage on its hand, if you know what I mean.
I mean, think about this. They never really, again, I always imagine if they did Static today, we'd be able to get into these issues. And I'm not saying like the show's poor for not getting to these issues, but it just kind of occurs to me. Think about this. So one with the Bang Babies concept, I always loved that everyone affected by it was like in the proximity of this area. And sometimes they stretched it a little bit, like really everyone was around this nearby area during the Big Bang, or like even the microbes were affected. Like sometimes they stretched it a little bit. I won't lie. Smallville did a lot worse with it, so I won't judge too harshly. I won't. Everybody was affected by like the kryptonite meteor shower. It was kind of stupid at times. Let's face it. But seriously, I think this one had a lot more of a grounded thing. Where basically, there was like a homeless man who had a really interesting episode, and you had like this kid. And points like you had everyone who was a bang. It all had a direct route, like a direct point of origin, which was fascinating. Like, okay, they were all in this nearby area, therefore they were created. They were all Bang Babies for this very specific event that we saw at the very beginning. And again, we have a kind of a nickname for the event, the Big Bang and the Bang Babies. I mean, it's so catchy. It's so neat. It kind of jazzed up the idea of metas and kind of sold it in a really interesting way. And again, what I bring up with like if Static were done today is that I think you can get into basically it was always kind of accepted. It was always kind of accepted in the show that no one was really looking into like the root cause of the Bang Babies and the metas. Like you had Alva Industries a couple times kind of float around, but it wasn't like throughout the whole series. And I think that today what you could do where this was caused by police dispelling tear gas on the gangs, and like think about the implications you could have there. They never really, again, it wasn't. I don't know if they really skirt to that because again, it would have maybe convoluted things a little bit, or again, it was a really gutsy storytelling. I don't know, but again, think about you can go even farther with that today. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway. So, and also the costume, like the last main difference is that the costume was simpler. Over the years they kind of made the costume a little bit more like the basically the image we had before us here. Which again, basically, if you look closely at this image before us here, the image at the bottom left hand corner, the red comic that says Static on it, you see?
Mm-hmm.
That's what his costume looked like. That was the first appearance. Basically, he wore that, and then he added a jacket onto it. And then eventually, they kind of made it look like this, which made it into the animated shows. So that's pretty much what they went with. He basically just kind of wore like kind of the undersuit without the coat and a hat on. Which yeah, it's an okay look, but again, it got a lot better with him on the disc and everything. So I love that.
Yeah, really, I think it's the disc that kind of defines it, Dragon, and that's
It is.
for me the disc. The symbolism of the disc is almost kind of similar to the freedom that you get with the idea of web slinging for Peter Parker. You know what I mean? It's a very sort of like, you see the disc and it's like it's instantly relatable. You know what I mean? It's like it's not quite flying, but it's like very, very naturalistic gliding, and I love it. I love it. It's very freeing.
It is. It is. So speaking of those qualities, let's. So points faithful adaptations. What I'm getting at with the introduction. It's a very strong introduction. Static has a great origin. So let's get into so breaching off of the disc. So the overall stuff, like overall, what do we love about this character? Again, the disc is a great visual overall. Again, it as you said, it's tantamount to his web slinging pose.
Yeah, beyond that, I love how good-hearted Virgil is, and how he's willing to see the good in everyone. Of course, his best friend being Richie, even though there might, of course, with the racial stuff that we're going to tackle very early on in this podcast, being being sort of a key point to his character. I love how his devotion to his friends never really ceases. It's he's so loyal, and he's always just aiming to be a good son and a good person, and I think he's such a good role model in that regard. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. So again, like in regards to the first thing that always jumped out to me, because as a kid watching the show, it's like, oh my god, this this design is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. Man, the static is such a great design. And of course, it even got better over time. I gave him like the different shirt and everything, but still, like, I love the original found quality of the look, where it had like the white shirt and everything on. It's like a guy who pieced together a costume and it looks great. Like during the era where it's like when Spider-Man put on a costume, it looks like he had like a Hollywood wardrobe team make it for him. It's like one of those things. And speaking of which, again, like overall, I think the best comparison you can make for Stag, I think it's a solid comparison. It's kind of Black Lightning meets Spider-Man. I think in a cool way, and that's kind of what you had with Stag. He's kind of in the colors of Black Lightning, with kind of that youthful and kind of really neat dynamicness and design of Spider-Man. But again, in regards to the character of it all, it's like he's this wisecracking young hero who learns as he goes. He's smart. And he comes from good stock, and that was my favorite quality of the show with Robert Hawkins. And you see the kid comes from good stock, therefore you understand where his morality comes from. It's like, what if
Robert Hawkins, man? Can we just highlight that dude for a second?
I'm pretty Tiki again. I think I mentioned it before. I think he was. If he was an honorable mention, I want to say he was on the main list back when we did our animated fathers, because I love.
I mean, he's got to be one of the best animated fathers out there, man. I mean, this dude is just like. He just warms my heart every time he's on screen. He is such a good, noble person, man.
Robert Hawkins, he's one of my. I gotta be honest, like this might be again because he's done so many roles, but I gotta tell you, one of my favorites, if not the favorite, he's definitely one of my favorite Kevin Michael Richardson performances. Just Robert Hawkins was a wonderful character. It's almost like what if Uncle Ben kind of stuck around for the course of the show in a way. It's kind of, I don't mean, look, I'm just, because there's a lot of Spider-Man inherently built in the stack. I mean, that's why I'm going for the Uncle Ben comparison. But seriously, he's just like that great moral center that's not beating you over the head with it. He's just kind of that great natural. Again, you absolutely understand where again, Virgil's always doing the right thing. Why this guy be a hero if you saw his father? And that's the great thing about it. So again, on the whole, it's just static. It's a great premise. It's a great exploration arc on him as a whole. Like, I love where he goes to. Again, it's the hero learning his lessons and kind of the morals and kind of the PSAs of it all. Just kind of learning as he goes. And he's not great at the job from the very start, but he's learning that you see the evolution. The kid starts like a manhole cover, ends with like a gas station home base, and he has the the kind of the tin foil to like the better folding disc for the the evolution and everything. Of course, the Richie of it all, Richie the Gear. Like, it's a great arc.
For sure, for sure.
All right.
Alrighty then.
So speaking to the arc a little bit, let's talk about how he grew as a character.
Okay, so I'm sorry, Dragon. Are we on growth?
Yes, we're on growth.
Okay, I'm sorry. I just my bad, my bad. Okay, so yes, growth. So Dragon, now is the time where I feel like we really should start breaking down some of those very special episode type moments. So, like, do you want to start with the big one that I wanted to talk about? The Richie's dad is a piece of shit racist. To be blunt about it.
Well, if you want to be blunt about it.
I like how he comes around by the end, but it's at the end of the day, he is pretty racist. But I like how this episode really did not shy away from it at all. They're like, no, we're going to explore this, and we're going to explore it in a way that the kids are going to understand and they're going to comprehend, and we're not going to talk down to the audience. Dragon, you know what? It's sort of Mr. Rogers like in a way.
Uh, in a way, sure.
I'm just saying it's Mr. Rogers like in a way where it's like, all right, we're going to address this issue. You kids know what this issue is. We're not going to pretend you don't know what it is. And we're going to handle it in a very mature way, and we're going to really kind of talk through it together.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I love I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to. I was going to build to that a little bit. I was trying to piece together a word. I mean, yeah, we do. I love how we set up Richie, and we set up Richie as he's just kind of like the friend. Again, I like that. If Richie, let me ask you this: if Richie never became a superhero, would you be happy with that character?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about him. He was just this excellent supporting character. He was in on the secret from the very beginning. He helped him out, and again, he kind of helped him kind of come up with. Even before he was like being a super genius, he had kind of good ideas that really helped him out in the field. And then it kind of got even better until like kind of a logical conclusion when he kind of donned a suit as well and was helping him as a sidekick. Again, he provided the gear, therefore he became gear. The gadget lover in me kind of got a kick out of that.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, of course, we see not everything's peachy with Richie. And again, let me put it to you this way. Again, I love that because that episode is so groundbreaking. You don't quite need this because that episode kind of did the rest of the work for you, and as you say, kind of made up for certain things with other really great stories. But Richie never did have a girlfriend in the series, and you could always. And let me put it to you this way: this isn't season one, so I can't speak to like if they're going for this specifically. But in the DCAU, they always did address kind of LBGT things really slyly and really cleverly. Like, yeah, we're not saying it doesn't happen. We're saying that these characters might be an item. And what I'm saying is, my point is like, Richie, there might have been some other issues brewing under the surface, even in that great episode where we have the main issue being racism, which is tremendous.
Uh-huh.
Which again, it's such it's so realistically done. Where it's the fact that Richie's father, I love the sense of dread in that episode. You know what I'm talking about, right? The sense of dread where...
Oh, yeah. And it's sort of like, I've had it happen before, too, with my folks on certain beliefs and certain issues. I'm not going to go into detail with that, but I feel like it's a very relatable issue, like you're friends with someone that that maybe your parents or your family might not agree with.
To put it delicately...
The sense of suspense is very palatable.
To put it delicately, there are folks, especially with parents or especially grandparents, but parents, grandparents alike, people come from different generations and they're going to have different beliefs that maybe don't jive with what's acceptable today or what's acceptable among friends or colleagues or everything. So sometimes you're going to have situations that are going to be uncomfortable. That's what they didn't shy away from when they showed this episode. Where you have like again James Marston, the one it's James Marston. I keep butchering. There's a James Marsdale and there's a James Marston. I keep screwing which one's which. But, the one who voices Max from a Goofy movie.
What?
Max from a Goofy movie. Is it Marston or Marsdale?
Marston, I believe.
Marston. So James Marston. He's he plays Richie in the series, and he's great. And again, I just love like the sense of dread and regret once his father comes to the door and he's just so embarrassed and he just snaps at him and he runs away. It's a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
Man. So speaking of some other issues we do see today, I can just kind of send some of like the growth overall. So Virgil starts off as this kid he's bullied and he's kind of thrown in the middle of this gang violence on a school level, which always was startling to me. you have like just kind of violence in the school, like going on like that. And again, was not shying away from these things.
Yeah, yeah. And just, I mean, throughout the show, we'd have all these different issues. Like, for example, Dragon, let me tell you, one of the issues that really hit me the hardest was Jimmy.
Ah, yes, Jimmy. Oh boy,
I mean, that one was, I mean, like I said, Dragon, as I keep going on about here, it's a very special episode, sure, but it's a very special episode that's done so, so right.
It is. It is. It's kind of this. Boy, Jimmy's a really big. I'm just trying to think where to broach this one.
What can I tell you, man? That one hit me harder than any other one. It really did.
And again, the Richie of it. I mean, our Richie gets wounded, and again, of all the characters get wounded, not Richie.
Right, exactly.
And the thing that hit me about that episode, don't get me wrong. I mean, of course, it's a ticking time bomb in the episode. You know, something bad's going to happen. Again,
oh God, yeah. It's basically Dunkirk.
In essence,
Dunkirk.
But I love that our main hero for the show, and again, this speaks to kind of the value of kind of doing Static as kind of this young kid. It's like this 15-year-old kid who's kind of learning as he goes. This is Virgil kind of going up against like his first gun issue, where it's like, oh my God. I mean, again, we know Virgil has fundamental gun issues, which I love with the character. Where there's one other big alteration I forgot to mention. So there's one big alteration with Static from the comic to the show, which I thought was a great idea for the show, where they killed off his mother. Uh-huh. His mother was in the books, but I think what they did was kind of a better thing here, where his mother died very heroically, and she died because of gun violence and gang violence specifically, kind of rioting and gang violence, and just really bad stuff going on. She was a paramedic, and she got caught in the crossfire.
And of course, the episode Flashback deals with that in a very beautiful way.
We'll get to.
Oh man, Dragon, I'm sorry. I don't mean to just be like jumping around to all these episodes, but it's almost kind of like talking about good Futurama episodes or something. You know what I mean? It's like one episode kind of tends to lead into another because they're also thematically tied together in a really good way.
Certainly, but you see what I'm going for here. We're just like let's connect some through lines here. So again, think about this. So we have the origin where we learned that he lost his mother because of gun violence. And you have that scene in the first episode where he holds a gun in his hand. And he's reminded like, oh, I'm crossing a line. What have I gotten myself into? And he does the responsible thing. And he tries to get out of there, but of course he's kind of caught in a bad position. Again, almost like Faye, he's kind of caught in the crossfire of the Big Bang, like his mother was with like kind of the Big Bang that killed her in a sense. So he's kind of somewhat thematic there. Anyway, what I'm getting at is you have like the seed of gun and gang violence within a school. So that's set up in episode 1. And again, we have kind of violence and kind of the point is like Static is fundamentally formed on bullying on a school level, which of course I imagine, especially more back then than it is today. And I'm not saying never happens today, but again, especially back then, like depending what school you're in, like school system. Again, if you're viewed as different for a number of reasons, let alone race, I imagine it's going to be a rough experience. I think that's what they're trying to tap into from the book to the series in a way. Lighter on television, but essentially that's what they're kind of theming there. Again, a bit of a race war going on.
Oh yeah,
which is unfortunate. So again, we have. So then we get to the Jimmy, which again, in a great sense, kind of reflects on where we started everything with Static. Where again, Static is kind of the ultimate advocate for bullying in a school system. Where again, the kid was kind of formed from bullying, kind of exploded and gone wrong, which kind of again endangered and changed a lot of lives from that point forward. And then we have the ultimate form of changing a life, someone kind of going bullied so much they're in constant terror to the point where they're going to get rid of their monster, get rid of their tormentor, even if it means kind of be unthinkable. And the thing that haunts me about it is the fact that Static realized that in costume he gets there and he's too late. And I love how helpless he's in the costume. He's kind of putting on kind of the machismo of like kind of being like, it's like how Peter Parker puts on the costume. He's a lot more confident in Spider-Man. He's a lot more confident in Shock. But in that moment, he's that 15-year-old kid who's in over his head. Like, what am I doing?
And he realizes that he could have done something. He could have turned the gun in. He could have said something to an authority figure, but he chose not to.
But again, he was scared. It wasn't that he like just
it's like a more classy version of 13 Reasons Why season 2 told in 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's pretty 20 minutes. Yeah, but you put it like that, yeah, it is 20 minutes.
Seriously.
Yep. Now, again, getting onto a lighter subject for a moment before we talk about some other really great things that they broached. I love kind of how we dealt with fame in the Static show. Now, you didn't get a lot of episodes like this, but we can kind of talk a little bit about the Batman stuff here. But I love that he starts off as this hometown icon, like he's kind of Dakota's kind of superhero, and he kind of developed fame. I don't know if you remember these just from your old days of watching Static Teak, but there were some fun episodes where in the Rubber Band Man episode, he has like we see the music industry and we see kind of the fame and fortune of Hollywood and the ideas. We have these really sleazy producer characters who are kind of hilarious.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
And essentially, like Static gets on a version of Cops, but with superheroes. It's an episode called Showtime.
Oh god,
and it's hilarious. A Static and Gear on a show where they're it's Cops, but at the end they want to manufacture it. It's just it's ridiculously funny, and it's kind of neat. What I'm getting is I like how they broach fame, where again he's become kind of this hometown hero. He's a showman of a hero. Ever since the first episode, he had the best line ever, where he says, "I'm Static, and I put a shock to your system." Of course, even Richie saying, "Good line." That's great. So the guy's
I love that continuity. Like in a lesser show, he would have just said that every episode, but in this show, it's like we can see him trying to make a thing out of it, and Richie being like, "Nah, I don't think it's working, man. You better just move on."
And I love that this is something that Batman.
That's what I'm talking about with the continuity.
And the cool thing about that, Tiki, is again, with the continuity, there's a through line. He's kind of doing stuff like that, and people notice. He's in the papers, like the cops kind of take a liking to him. There's a number of people who are, for the most. Again, I like that we kind of an Aunt May thing with Robert Hawkins, where initially he was like, "Oh, Static, he's just another bang baby." Why should I trust? He's just like kind of denouncing his kid without knowing it. And, but for the most part, people got on Static's side, and then we have like kind of these kind of enterprising opportunities, like these merchandising or kind of fame opportunities that kind of come his way. Static again, it's the moral of the story where you got to learn, like don't always go for the endorsement deal. Sometimes you put yourself at risk, or you put yourself in danger, or put your image in danger. And that's kind of what we learned. But like Batman would never have that issue. Batman would never do that. It's like he'd pull a bad exit. He would never stick around to do merchandising. It would never happen.
Right.
And that's something we can explore with Static that we can't do with a lot of characters. Superman might do like one story, but Static we can go to the well a few times. Like he teamed up with Romeo once, Romeo, the rapper, for a music video.
And want to talk about Shaq?
Well, that
just to get us into the black history of it all, just tie it back to Steel.
Okay, real quick, just put a pin. We'll talk about it real quick. Okay, momentarily. One other thing. So what I was getting at is that we broached fame, but then we kind of rewarded him as again the season went on. He's teaming up with Batman and Superman. Eventually, the Justice League.
Sure.
All kind of all the way to to working with Romeo and everything. So
God,
he's got there. And speaking of that,
we all know, Craig, and we all know that little Romeo is the height of all power.
Of course he is. I mean, of course you know why that happened, don't you?
No, tell me.
Okay, so one thing we're gonna highlight about Static. I love the original introduction of Static. To the beat, to the beat.
Dragon, I love the soundtrack to the show in general. I think the soundtrack to the show is just absolutely banging.
Never mind. I was gonna try to make a stupid joke. It is cool. Trying to make a bang baby joke. I think it fell flat. Anyway, but yes, Tiki, it is, and I love the original version. But here's what happened in the later seasons. I don't know if it was all season 4, but maybe 3 and 4. The very least was 4. Basically, when you get the redesign of the costume, and they kind of rebranded, they kind of redesigned things a little bit, a smidge. And that's when they had like a new introduction where it was really well animated, but you had Little Romeo doing the song. And hence the whole we have him do a song. Let's get him for an episode. Why not? You
all know how I don't like dill pickles.
Oh God. Anyway, so speaking of there are a lot of really great guest stars in Static, and I got to tell you, what's so great about this is Static Shaq. Shaq actually turns in a really good performance. It's a really good episode about Shaq, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's like I feel like when Shaq just gets to be himself, he's charming.
I gotta tell you, Tiki, it's been years since I've watched
Jordan syndrome.
It's been years since I've watched that one in particular because I go back to like some of the other ones that I like. Definitely, I'm going back to the Batman episodes before I'm going back to the Shaq crossover. But seriously, it's the Shaq one held up tremendously. It held up a whole lot better than I thought it would. It really did, especially after Steel. After we talked a little bit about Steel with our earlier segment of the 97
So, folks, if
Steel
you want
movie.
Shaq and a good representation of like Black History Month type stuff, watch that episode.
And again, there was a lesson in dealing with fame where, Shaq, he can't blend in, but he's kind of a celebrity everywhere he goes, and he kind of, Shaq kind of posed the question. Virgil posed the question, like, how do you deal with it? Well, I'm a 7 foot tall guy. That's all I really am. And I love that. Here's how Shaq's doing a good job. And I swear to God, it's like, it is Shaq doing the voice, but it sounds like it's not Shaq doing the voice. Does that make any sense?
Right.
What crazy. Right. I had to check that because, he's turning in an actual performance here. I don't know if that's Shaq. He's not doing like the thing he's doing that all those stupid general commercials,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's neat. I gotta tell you, I love how, again, it's definitely bolstering Shaq's ego a little bit, but it's doing it in a really cool way where it's like he's helping him save the day. He's kicking the bad guys around. Good for Shaq. But here's the bit that I loved. I love that he saves Virgil and Richie when they're out of costume. It's like, I love that Shaq saving the kids, man. That rocks.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Not Shaq attack, Shaq defense. I love it. Of course, there's one infamous episode called Hoop Squad where basically they tried to recapture the Shaq stuff, and it's not that good to my recollection. But
oh boy,
I heard it's infamous, so I'm kind of agreeing with my initial assessment. But again, I haven't rewatched it, so I can't say with autonomy. It's just basically it's basketball players like who are secretly superheroes, and it's just kind of stupid.
Oh man, yeah, that does not sound like the kind of like Hey Arnold type stuff I was raving about.
That's what I'm saying. It's anyway. Okay, let's see some other really good stuff. In terms of the growth, we already mentioned kind of Richie the Gear, so we covered that. Oh, let's talk about Rubber Band Man, please. Let's talk about Rubber.
Yeah, Rubber Band Man is one of the most I feel like he could.
He had, I think, the greatest arc in the
show in some ways.
Yeah, he had a great arc where he started off as this in. I'm not sure if you rewatched this one or not, but it's a classic. It was the introduction to Rubber Band Man, where he was a guy looking for revenge.
Uh-huh.
And this, I think, is kind of a moment in my youth where I was watching this and I was like, you know what? There's something special about this. They kind of, I think, on some level to get kind of connected. There's something kind of Batman the animated series like about this. I can't put my finger on it, but it's the idea of this guy getting revenge on a record label that kind of stole his idea, stole his music, or basically kind of stole from it in some way. And he got revenge, and he had a moment where he could have just kind of let it lie, where he wasn't in the wrong, but he was seeking revenge, and he didn't relent. And that was kind of, over time, he became a superhero. I thought that was a great arc.
Yeah, I love everything about his interaction with Static and the way that he kind of fits into the family dynamic of the show. He's just a great addition to the overall cast.
I love that he was Ebon's brother. I loved it when they did that. He had great connects. It was like, not only is he was just kind of a guy who seemed initially irredeemable, but no one's irredeemable. Again, Static could reach him, but also the big moment of truth where his brother is not only, again, like, his brother is kind of the ultimate bad guy of the show. It's Ebon, man. You don't want to mess with Ebon. Ebon's scary. He blends in the shadows and everything, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And and of course, ultimately, they do some other really great groundbreaking stuff with Rubber Band Man we'd never see. I mean, unless you want to save it for later. You want to talk about it here? The PSA?
Yeah, you can jump right in. What do you like about it?
Well, first we broached dyslexia on an animated show.
Right.
Which I think is a really great message, especially for kids if they're watching the show. Again, like Rubber Band, giving a superhero dyslexia is something you never see. I mean, to my recollection, I've never seen that until Static. I really haven't. Where Rubber Band Man, and we put him in these great pulse pounding situations, these great anxiety inducing situations where Rubber Band Man's in a situation where if he needs to push a button, it's a very simple thing. He needs to push a button, but again, he can't read the button because the letters are jumbled. And then we have this big moment of truth where we kind of find out his different method of learning, where it's kind of like you feel the letters to kind of rearrange them, and he can do it now with his powers. And at the end, we have this great direct to camera PSA, and I love when they do the to camera PSAs.
Yeah.
You know, where he's where Static's kind of like going in for the PSA, but then Rubber Band Man shows up. Is yeah, let's talk about it. Just, but again, it's a really good message about dyslexia doesn't mean it doesn't mean you're stupid or anything. It means you have a condition, which
It's
just
more of a
means
learning disability than anything else.
the only time I've ever seen I've only seen dyslexia talked about one other time in animation. One other time. Arthur.
Yeah, yeah.
George had dyslexia. The George the kid with the antlers. He had
Uh
dyslexia. The only other time I've ever seen dyslexia addressed in animation was that. Now maybe that was first, but Stat did it better.
huh. Fair enough. Fair enough.
So I mean, those are the only two. Those are the only two. But yeah, it's. Let me see if there's any other major ones here. I think it's. Okay, so in the arc of Static, let's talk about the Robert Hawkins thing. We're okay. So eventually, he tells his father the truth. He tells his father about his.
I
Basically,
love the reaction where it's like, like maybe in my heart of hearts I've always known, but it doesn't matter because yeah, I don't like the idea of it, but if it's what you feel is right, then god damn it, I'm proud of you anyways.
one, it's given Robert Hawkins intelligence of like he was able to put together. Okay, they kidnapped me to get the Static. Ipso facto, might be my son. He's always running off,
Right,
Clark Kent
right.
style. He might be my son. But again, he was so accepting, and I was so regretful that again, the last two episodes of the show did this. Like he was kidnapped, and then the last episode's like, okay, so we knew for about two episodes, but it was good though.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep. And again, speaking of the end of the series, what did you think about did you get a chance to watch the last episode again?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, I love the big moment of change there, where it's kind of like he's still going to save the day, despite the fact his powers are dwindling. And again, it's kind of like, well, this is fun while it's lasting. It has this great moment with Gear.
Yeah, yeah, man. It's very much a kind of, a very melancholy sort of end to the story for sure.
Yeah, basically, it's the closest we get. There are two episodes that are kind of like Static No More, kind of a Spider-Man No More equivalent, where you have Sunspots,
Uh,
where his powers are going haywire because, and this is a cool sci-fi idea, by the way, the idea that sunspots is kind of phenomenon that happens to the Earth every now and again. Sunspots happen, therefore it messes with the Bang Baby's powers. Like the powers get overloaded or get zapped. It's like an eclipse almost.
uh,
And then of course this, where the powers are wearing off because of a cure, kind of an X-Men idea. Like there's a cure to the Big Bang that was kind of implemented without their okay. And they have a moment where they're going to stop the bad guys, and they're thinking, well, if we're going out, we might as well go out stopping Ebon and Hot Streets, stopping our arch enemies. And such a again, it's a really kind of gets you a little choked up in retrospect. You know what? That's nice, man. That's just like they're going out fighting, they're going out saving the day. How nice is that?
yeah, for sure, for sure.
I guess the overall arc. I kind of skipped over this, but to just put a pin in it, he made peace with the loss of his mother. That was a big arc in the series. They always went through the ever since the beginning. It was, of course, Virgil dealing with the death of his mother and kind of dealing with that loss. And,
And I like how it's not just a one and done. I like how seasons later, Robert Hawkins is like, I still don't think Virgil's come to terms with his mother's death, and that's super realistic on the show's part. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course, that one has a great payoff. We're going to talk about momentarily. Yeah.
I'm sorry. Like I said, that time travel episode is just amazing.
That's one I want. We'll talk about that when we get the moments, Dig. We'll hit that one big time. Don't get me wrong. That was too important, though. We got to wait for that one.
No, I hear you. I hear you. I'm just kind of doing my due diligence to hype it up.
So in essence, I mean, unless you have anything else major to add, I mean, that's essentially kind of the arc. He kind of starts as that kid kind of.
No, I'm good, man. I think we covered it.
So let me talk about Young Justice real quick. There's not a lot there.
Okay.
So Young Justice, they introduced him in season 2, and he has a bigger role in season 3. And the gist of it is this, and it's a really cool reworking of Static. I highly recommend this. So one, Young Justice is a great show in itself, but in case anyone's curious, the idea is that the idea is this, where they introduced metahumans in a different way. There's no Big Bang, but they did something kind of clever, where they kind of made Static part of the modern Super Friends. I know how crazy that sounds, but essentially there were these young kids who kind of were turned into metahumans by the aliens called the Reach. The Reach is kind of the alien bad guy. It's a Blue Beetle thing. They're points. They're the bad guys who are pretending to be the good guys in the culture. It's really, trust me, Tiki, you'd love this. But point being, In season 2, the Reach come down that they're trying to buddy the Earth, trying to like, hey, we're the good guys, we're the aliens, like we're the friendly aliens trying to reach out to you guys, like, hey, try Reach Cola. They literally sell they sell Reach products, Tiki, which includes beverages called Reach Cola. I kid you not. So my point is this: so we have these kind of modern super friends where we have like kind of the Apache chief. Type character who essentially has the same power set. We have basically a number of characters kind of fitting into those molds, and Static is kind of the Black Vulcan of the original Super Friends. It's kind of a bit of a Black Lightning homage, which we'll talk about when we eventually get the Black Lightning one of these years. My point is that basically the Static's like he's kidnapped along with the rest of these kids from Dakota. He was mentioned his father and his sister and everything that we kind of know from the show, and he was turned into a meta, and he's kind of dealing with it. And again, points like they kind of started getting the ball rolling in season 2. And season 3, he's being mentored by Black Lightning. He's on the disc and everything. He's kind of an amalgam of the Static Shock look, but also the original look with the baseball cap. It's neat. And again, right now it's like season 3 is like halfway through, so I'm hoping they're going to do more with him. But it was like a cool thing where Virgil's kind of like the unofficial leader of the team. He's kind of he's again kind of the down to earth guy, kind of speaking to things. So the point is, I want to see more of this guy, but it's an interesting reworking. Is basically what I'm getting at in broad strokes.
Okay. All right. So I guess with defining moments, of course, we've been through a good number of them already. I feel like the big bang of it all really set in motion a lot of things. That episode with Richie's dad, Dragon, is an episode that I see cited on a lot of lists of, like the blame it on Georges of the world, like the like cartoon episodes with messages and that kind of stuff. It's always brought up. It's always like kind of hammered home. Like I said, in similar videos where you'll see stuff like very particularly heavy hitting episodes of stuff like Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street. I really do feel like that episode in particular is in the same vein where it's like, all right, like we're going to talk to you about something serious and we're not going to dumb it down and pretend you don't know what it means. You know what it means, and we know you know what it means.
I just love pairing Robert Hawkins, this awesome character, with Richie's bigoted father, and and we have this great moment between the two of them, where Robert says something along the lines of, and what your problem is, you barely, again, because the idea is like they're looking for Richie, but Richie's father barely knows him because he doesn't know where to look, the first place to look for his son. Or Robert actually has a few ideas. And Robert calls him out on this thing. And you know what? You're really missing out. You know why? Because you have a really great kid and you don't even know it. Something along those lines, and it really it puts it in perspective. And again, the grander context is that this really great guy that you've put down because you have these really misguided beliefs. You have these misguided beliefs, therefore you think every black person's out to get your job. Essentially, that's what he was working, and the idea is like he has to deal with black people at work. Therefore, he kind of held it against any time someone got something over him, he blamed it on black people, which is just really stupid. But you know what I mean? The point being, he had that viewpoint. Supposedly, he thought every black person was just completely out to get him, or just like better than them. But it's anything like Virgil just making nice conversation at the table. He just like really wrote Virgil off.
Virgil was just trying so hard in this episode, and that's what makes it all the more heartbreaking when when it all kind of plays out.
Exactly, and the idea that Richie would talk about Virgil all the time, but he never mentioned that his friend was black, knowing how his father would react, and it was and the idea that again, like this guy that he would just sideline. Is giving him these great words of wisdom to kind of shake his worldview. It's not going to change the man overnight, but it's going to make him make an effort by the end of the day, especially after almost losing his son.
And you know what? I do think the idea of them, kind of teasing him and going to Comic-Con together, that's adorable, man. It's such a nice step in the right direction. It's a good.
It is. So again, that episode, it's a great one for a reason, folks. It is. Okay, let's see. So, of course, I already mentioned, the introduction, the origin, all that. So that's, again, basically 101 of Static Shock. It's a great first episode, to say the least. But beyond that, of course, we talked a lot about Jimmy already, but let me talk about the ending of Jimmy, the PSA quality. We're going to get Static flying the camera. And again, if you're a kid watching, it's like, oh my God, it's really getting serious. Now, Static's telling you a life lesson right now. Better listen up.
Yeah.
Static, again, he gives all the facts on the all the gun violence, like all the very real statistics about gun violence, and we have these kind of little images kind of happening as basically we see. Everything he's talking about, like all the statistics, we kind of see enacted on screen animation, which always felt a little chilling and like, man, there's something off about this, but it's off for a reason, man. It's teaching you stuff. It's like they have like a lot of school shootings, and we see a guy outside of the school like holding a gun. It's like like the teacher or the officer of the school like holding a gun, like oh, what a shame, like one of those poses. Then like the all that stuff, just oh boy. Okay, Fallen Hero. We got to talk about Fallen Hero with Green Lantern.
Oh man, excuse me, Dragon. I did watch that one. I got to admit that was in kind of like a big clump marathon of episodes I watched, so it's not in my head quite as much as I would want it to be. So why don't you start it off? And hopefully,
well, particularly we got to talk about it because when we started Black History, here's what John Stewart. It's gonna be really embarrassing if we don't talk about it.
Okay, wait, that's the one with so basically it's Sinestro going around copying John Stewart, right, and making a bad out of him.
Yes, we have one. We have this whole. Let me point out how trippy this is. First off, before we get into the severity and the awesomeness of it, I'll just real quick, just the comedy of it. Okay, just let me put this in perspective. So, I should have brought this up in overall, but of course, Phil Lamar, the guy's a wonder kind of a performer. The man is just so talented. It's unreal. Where he not only has he voiced, he's voiced Hermes Conrad, he's voiced Samurai Jack, he's voiced John Stewart, and he's voiced Static. All of these, and they're all very different characters, by the way. They're all very different. Like, and he has a conversation with himself the majority of this episode where he's playing three versions of himself here, where he's playing the 15-year-old kid with Virgil. He's playing your classic John Stewart, like this giant, deep-chested guy,
right, yeah,
chested guy, and then he's playing the more comedic, evil version of John Stewart, where he's just basically giving like the reverse of the PSA. He's giving like a negative PSA to Static, basically giving him evil mentorship, like, "Oh, Static, don't worry, one of these days you can take what you want and rob people."
He's like the George C. Scott smoke cloud from Cartoon All Stars.
Oh my God, yes, and he does the same pose. Yes, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. He's the advocate for superheroes going bad when he's Sinestro posing as John Stewart. Why would Sinestro play John Stewart?
But it feels good.
It's just one Sinestro. Let me put it this way: this is nothing against the DCAU. Didn't do a lot with Sinestro. He was there and he was accurate, but I'm just saying on the whole, I've seen better Sinestros. And the fact of the matter is, this was like Sinestro only had 2 big episodes in the DCAU, Tiki. And this was the second one, and I think they just kind of like Sinestro's is going to these very elaborate measures to frame John Stewart. And it's a little ridiculous when you really think about it, but it's like, come on, it's kind of cool. It's fun, It doesn't make sense, probably not. Is it fun? Yes. And the point being, he's really just sticking it to John Stewart because Sinestro really hates Hal Jordan, but we couldn't get away with that. And we points to how I don't want to get what I mean. We talked about it all in the John Stewart video. Point being, the big getting to the severity and the cool factor of all this though is the fact that Virgil. The idea is that Virgil doesn't have a lot of black heroes to look up to in the DCAU because at least at this was before Justly Unlimited, mind you. So right now all you have is John Stewart, and then of course we get to Anansi the Spider, who's really cool, and we'll get to him momentarily. But we have John Stewart, and again the idea is like one of his basically his role model, his Luke Cage, if you will. The black role model of the DCAU to end all black role models of the DCAU, which is a great character. He's turned bad, and and his hero worship is kind of like it's all like, if he goes bad, what hope do I have? Like, what hope do I have to be here if this guy, the best of the best, he's going south? What am I going to do? And by the end, of course, his faith in John Stewart was kind of well founded, but also his skeptic. I love that John Stewart is like, you questioned me, and that was the right move, but you believed in the right thing in the end. So I love that John Stewart wasn't blaming him for basically he fought him when he thought he was the evil John Stewart. But again, he was not wrong for questioning his hero. Good stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so okay, let's talk Nasi the Spider. It's basically the whole Static in Africa story.
Oh man, this was a treat, man. This episode was a treat. I loved it. Uh,
Yeah.
Dragon, I'm sure you know more about this than I do. Was the spider thing a direct reference to the fact that Static was kind of based off of like, hey, what if we had an African American Spider-Man?
Now, Tiki, I would love to think so. And here's the funny thing, okay? I
Okay.
forget if it's specifically this episode, but a lot of episodes, a lot of the best ones actually. I think Jimmy, at the very least, at the very least, I know Flashback and the last episode of the series were all written by this guy, John Semper Jr. Now you may remember that name. John Semper Jr. was the main, basically the main story editor, kind of the main showrunner of Spider-Man the animated series in the '90s. That was
Uh-huh.
him. So you can see, and bear in mind, like this is after Spider-Man the Animated Series has gone off the air, so you can see a lot of Spider-Man influence in the series in these episodes. But the point is, if they have a character who's modeled after Spider-Man, they got the right guy to work on those episodes. So the implication to me is that it might be a direct Spider-Man reference if John Semper's involved. That's what I'm getting.
Gotcha.
I can't prove that, but I'd like to think so. But here's the thing I got from Anas, and they do have references to Spider-Man in the episode where he's like saying, "Shoot your webs! I'm not that kind of spider." I think Carl Lumbly does the voice of Anansi. I don't know that for certain, but it sounds so much like him. And Carl Lumbly, he played the Martian Manhunter in the DCAU, and he's great. Anyway,
What I
but
love
yes,
about that episode is that it goes such a long way towards sort of explaining what it's like to be, a minority in your own country. You know what I mean? And
the
then like,
phone call to Richie.
yeah, and then like the free nature of being amongst your own people. I feel like it's handled and it's talked about in a very sensitive, again, Dragon, a very Mister Rogers esque. Like, look, we're not going to beat around the bush here. You're mature enough to know what we're talking about, so we're just going to present it in a very straight manner. You know
Now,
what I
this
mean?
felt this felt more like the Mister Rogers comparison. This one where he's on the phone
Okay.
with Richie and he tells him like, "I don't." Basically, it's in very simple terms, but very simply at very again. I like that Richie doesn't quite get it. I love that. I love that again. It's a hard concept to get, but again, you get it though. Where
Uh-huh.
Virgil says, I'm in Africa. I'm not a black kid in Africa. I'm a kid in Africa. Essentially, is what he's kind of saying to him there. And again, Richie's like, well, I don't get it. He kind of slowly, I guess he kind of gets a little bit. The point is, again, it's something you can't quite get unless you're in Virgil's shoes, and I love
Uh-huh.
that. And also again, bridging off the whole Green Lantern thing, the guy who's like he doesn't have a lot of black role models, like kind of heroes to look up to, kind of mold himself after. Again, because Black Lightning isn't quite in the DC AU, so they really kind of lacked a little bit there. Um, my point is that Anasi, we have this great moment at the end of the episode where he meets this Anasi character who's really cool, by the way. I'm not a magic guy, but I gotta tell you, Anasi was cool. Where he had he had kind of a Zorro look to him, which I really dug. He has like a Zorro look. He uses magic. He can stand upside down. Basically, he can wall crawl like a spider. That's kind of the main spider gimmick of it all. And he throws nets like webs. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, basically this guy he at the end he has this conversation with Virgil because Virgil lets him in on the secret because he respects this guy so much. He kind of lets him in on who he is, and then basically at the end says, "Well, thanks for kind of inspiring me." Well, I don't see a lot of black role models. He says, and then we have this moment at the end where Nazi says to him, "There are, you're my hero too." Where basically he says like like Static is his hero as well, which I thought was so nice. And it's like, oh man, that's so nice. Nazi. And then essentially what that boils down to is the mission statement of Milestone, where we could have a myriad of these great diverse heroes that you could have a role model to. If you haven't seen one in comics, you already have.
Sure.
And Nazi's kind of the mission statement, so that's cool. Anyway, so let's not very little. We got to talk about Flashback.
Oh boy, yeah, Dragon. This is the Jurassic Park of the series.
And for me, again, this one's the John Semper Jr. episode. And John Semper Jr. loves doing these sorts of episodes. Like Spider-Man the Animated Series ended on the big episode like this, where there's time travel, or in this case, there's universe hopping, where you have all this. Basically, the premise of Spider-Verse comes from that episode, where it's all the different versions of Spider-Man meeting each other, and it has moments like that, like this episode is all throughout that episode. That's where they kind of got the inspiration for this. And there's a big Spider-Man Uncle, like if I could have saved Uncle Ben parallel in this episode.
Uh-huh.
So yes, so start us off.
Okay, so I don't know, man. It's just the whole thing just has this sense of this sense of tragedy to it. It's like we again, it really is the ultimate culmination of that storyline that's been building throughout the entire show of Robert Hawkins not knowing. I'm sorry if it's raining very loudly outside, Dragon. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but
Not really.
okay. I'm sorry. It's kind of making me paranoid. Anyway,
I'm not worried. No, the rain's fine. Take it. It's not really doing anything.
Okay. So anyways, so Robert Hawkins, has been worried about worried about Virgil the whole series, about how Virgil's not being able to handle his mother's death. And I feel like this episode is sort of the ultimate culmination of that, where he gets a chance to say goodbye, but in some ways he realizes that it's never going to be satisfying. No matter what he does, it's kind of like this cosmically lonely acceptance that he has to go through. You know what I mean? And it's a very powerful message, man. It's a very downer message, but it's just like kind of like the ultimate like accepting death episode.
It is. It's just again, it's the fact that he can make peace with it, but he'll never get to say goodbye. And this episode allowed him to say goodbye.
Exactly.
And again, allowed him to say goodbye in the most tragic.
It's like the ultimate sort of like this is his fate. It's like there's nothing he can do to change it. And then the ending is so melancholy but so sweet at the same time that it's just perfect.
Well, first off, just to kind of undercut again, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to undercut it, but I gotta tell you though, it occurred to me rewatching it that she did say that she was proud of her boy.
Oh no! Oh yes, she did. Oh god!
And it was a big story point. In other words, Tiki, you could say she was
proud of her boy. Yes, she was proud of her boy. I wonder if Will Smith is going to be proud of his boy.
No. What?
God. All right.
Anyway, okay, no, in all seriousness, though. But yes, she was this beautiful moment where he gets to meet his mother, and this is kind of the stuff we kind of saw in the Flash at the end of the Flash season one, where we kind of have a moment where like Barry Allen gets to meet his mother, knowing something bad happens to his mother. And we kind of have that here with Virgil's mother here, where again she gets to think of how beautiful and rare a scene this is. And this is a John Semper scene if I've ever heard one. Some people say, here's the thing, it always bugs me when people rag on 90s Spider-Man. And believe me, I'm not saying it's not a perfect show. Don't get me wrong, I'm not arguing that. But here's the thing that bugs me. When people say like, it's a little bit of melodramatic. Well, you know what? Maybe there's maybe a melodrama. Like, I hate soap operas, but I'm going to take Spider-Man with a soap opera. All right, I'll take it. But screw you if you can't accept this, because there's a scene with Mary Jane in that show where it's one of those beautiful scenes I've ever seen. Yes, the dialogue's a little on those, but who cares? That's what I'm saying here. It's like this is one of those scenes where it's the boy saying. The boy gets to meet his mother, and again, she gets to see her boy grow up. The boy that she tucked in, like I presume, like a 10-year-old version of Virgil. It's like I believe she died like 5 years ago, and that's the point. Is like she just put that kid to bed, and then she gets to see him all grown up and learns that like the hero that he becomes, and he tells her everything about him, and oh my god, and the fact that he does all he can to save her. He tells her to wait on the roof. He tells her that something bad's going to happen without saying exactly what. She's like, just wait here. Don't go in there. And I love that she has the statue built, which kind of gets it on Virgil's mind. It's all relative, man. And of course, we have this beautiful moment where, again, she can't fight. It's the reason Virgil's a hero, man. It's like he comes from that good stock, not just the good stock of Robert Hawkins, but the good stock of his mother and the DNA, where people were in need, people were in trouble, people were getting hurt. She had to intervene. She had to save him. And we have this beautifully heart-tugging moment where Virgil, he realizes, he sees her on the ground as they're being jettisoned home because the time belt's been screwed around.
It's like the great power, great responsibility moment.
It is, and it's just he can't save her, and he has to. It's like it's the age old, like it's the ripple effect of time travel. You can change one thing, but the stream always course corrects. You can't stop tragedy from happening. It's going to happen in some form or another. Now she knows something, but she's still fated to die. And Virgil just kind of realizing learns it from his father of all people. She always called you her little hero, and I never quite got it, but now I do. It's like, oh my god, it's beautiful.
Jesus Christ. Ooh, that right in the feels, man. Right in the.
But again, just the fact he tried to save her and he couldn't, but he did get something out of it. It wasn't all for nothing, you know. When he came away with something. Think about how great that is.
Oh man,
he got to say goodbye, man. He got to say goodbye.
Mic drop.
Yes.
All right.
But speaking of a little bit of Robert Hawkins, let's talk about Junior. Man, Junior's Junior is one of my favorite episodes of Static.
Uh-huh.
You know, with the Alva and Alva.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, a little bit of there's definitely a lot of Osborne influence on that one. Definitely a lot of Harry Osborne and Norman Osborne influence there. And I love that Static, you know, like Virgil was going to tell his father about his identity, but then we have this beautiful on the rooftop. And I love they went to Tiki. It's like not the same, of course, but you know what? They had a lot of rooftop scenes. I'm just saying. Robert Hawkins and Virgil. Not going to make a direct reference here, but you know, they have rooftop scenes like another beloved character. Just saying. No, but seriously, I love this scene where Virgil was going to tell his father way early on, like season 1 Static. He was going to tell him that he was Static shot, that he was Static, and Virgil's like, "Look, son, I trust you. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt. You'll tell me when you're ready." And it's like, oh god, I thought that was great. And of course, the punchline being we had this great parallel with the Alvas, where the Alvas had this horrible relationship where Alva Jr. tried nothing but to please his father. He was a good kid. He tried to please his father and tried to kind of play into the company, the family business, and his father just kept shutting him out. The polar opposite of what Virgil and Robert were on the brink of, where, again, the superhero wing was kind of getting in the middle of them. But again, they kind of found an armistice by talking it out and being willing to, it was just being willing to talk. And Alva was not willing to talk, and therefore he lost his son. And it's a great tragedy of an episode. Let's see. I think. Well, I guess one biggie before I guess we move on, because we go on. There are a lot of great Static moments, folks. We go on forever. Really cool.
Yeah, like I said, it really is kind of like a Hey Arnold style library of like really good moments.
But there's one more I got to talk about. I have to talk about. We got to talk about Batman.
Okay. Yeah. I'll let you take the floor on this, Dragon. I mostly have just some kind of nostalgia for it, but I'll just kind of let you sort of do your own thing with this one.
So, folks, suffice to say, one of my nostalgic favorites with Static was him meeting Batman. Of course, one, in the grand history of, again, it's the first time he's.
I'm gonna mute myself just in case of the rain, okay? Because I'm being paranoid.
Again, the rain's fine, but all right, do what you will.
Okay, well, just for my peace of mind, all right.
All right, for your peace of mind, fine. Anyway, so let me put it this way. So of course, you meet huge fan of the animated series, and still to this day, huge fan of it. So again, this is the first time like Static Shock shows just happening. I happened to watch. The thing always touched me with the DC issue of the DCAU shows is that I would come across them in the most interesting of ways, where basically they would come on Toonami or kind of come on like the programming on Cartoon Network. It'd be kind of like in the afternoon programming that would then bleed into Toonami, and that's kind of how I would experience a lot of the DCAU shows. Particularly Batman Beyond Static. I don't know if they were like back to back or whatnot, and that's eventually kind of how they aired, and that's how I watched them. And again, just by that, I was watching Static, and again, a character I haven't seen kind of done. I haven't seen in such a long time Batman as the way I remembered him in my youth appearing on Static Shock. Oh my god! Of course, it wasn't the same. It was kind of the New Adventures model, but I really hadn't seen a lot of New Adventures at that time. So it was like, oh my god, there's Batman. He's back. He's on Static. And again, it wasn't like the old Bruce Wayne that we saw in Batman Beyond, which is cool, but it's like, oh my god, Batman in his prime is meeting Static. And not only that, and the thing I love about these two Batman meeting Static episodes, it's League of the Big Leagues, I think the first one's called. It's Static, this young hero I'm kind of coming across. Man, this guy's just cool. He's winning me over, and then he meets Batman, and he earns Batman's respect. It's like, oh my god, yes. And there's this great moment where, again, Virgil's just kind of like the kid who wants to impress Batman. It's like, we all been there. If we were in his shoes, like, yeah, I want to impress Batman, but I wouldn't want to get in his way, and that's kind of where Static's in. But again, it's on Static's home turf, where Batman's going to stop the Joker, who's kind of messing with Bang Babies, trying to get a gang out of the Bang Babies. And kind of leads this really great...
like the moment where I met Bob Gurr briefly at the Walt Disney Family Museum, Dragon. It was like, all right, look, I want to say more to him. I want to stop his day dead in his tracks and just like chat him up. But instead, I'm just going to go with the motto that we were trained to do. Smile and nod, smile and nod, smile and nod.
Yep. And that's the thing, like it's such a kick out of the moment where Static, the trick that we've seen Batman fall for so many times, where classically, where Batman he grabs the Joker's hand, he gets the joy buzzer, he gets electrified by the joy buzzer. We have this bombastic moment where Static kind of defeats the Joker by Joker's like reaching for a hand. He's waiting to shock somebody. He thinks it's Batman. Static grabs his hand, just reverses it on him. Like, yes, that's so cool. But nothing again. Again, that was that. I think that's the better episode. But then we have Hard as Nails. Hard as Nails. Years later, I have much more respect for. Hard as Nails is the second interaction, which is even better because it's just Batman Static. There's no Robin in the mix. Nothing against Robin, but it's a little bit more one-on-one. Also, Gordon's in that episode, which didn't hurt either. And we have like a great gag with Bullock where he says, "Oh, Robin must have changed his hair." Where he thinks Robin is Static. It's just stupid, but it's great. But no, seriously though, that episode it has an arc. It has a legit arc where it's Batman and Virgil getting to know each other on a more intimate level. Where Static is taken to the Batcave, and one Batman finds out his identity through like a little kind of learn as you go thing, where his student ID was in his pocket. That therefore he found out what he was doing, which is just it's just funny. And for me, the episode kind of hinges on this thing where he's earning trust, like he's blindfolding him as he goes to the Batcave, and then we have these moments where one Static pulls a bat exit, which is nothing but awesome because this whole episode, Virgil's trying to redeem a Bang Baby, which of course is like kind of classic Batman, where Batman's like trying to redeem his villains at times, and he's kind of reminding Batman, we can do that, we can redeem our, she's a Bang Baby from my town, I can redeem her, and he does, and basically sells Batman on helping cure the Bang Babies, helping cure this girl. And Bruce Wayne, the next day, like Bruce Wayne is like paid for her treatment and everything. We have this beautiful moment. It makes me a little emotional. I gotta be honest, I'm thinking about it. This is great. where Bruce Wayne, I gotta say, on a rewatch, it never hit me this much on the first watch, but I mean, years later, it's like, oh my God, it was so nice. Where I'm getting soft in my old age, folks, forgive me, but it's this. It's where Bruce Wayne's walking down the hallway and Virgil Hawkins just out of costume, just thanking Bruce Wayne. He has no idea who he is. He's just thanking him for paying for the treatments and everything. Basically, he kind of clues him in on like, well, yes, maybe it's about earning trust. And she's not the only one who's earned trust. And basically, in that, Virgil kind of puts together like, oh, he's Batman. It's like he basically no. What happens is he's not the only one that's earned trust. Then Alfred shows up, and Alfred was like, plucking like thorns out of Static when they were kind of attacked by Poison Ivy's trees, and he basically Static puts two and two together, like, oh my God, same butler, you're Batman, and oh my God, it was so great. Like, yes, Batman trusted him with his secret identity because he trusts the kid. He takes a liking to Static, and when they go in the Justice League, he vouches for him. Batman vouched for Static. Batman, no Static shock. No Static. That's awesome. Again, the fact is a built-in arc and everything, and even in the future, during Batman Beyond, when they had an episodes, like he remembered him, and of course, Justice League Unlimited, where we saw Static. And by the way, in JLU, we completely skipped over that. Remember JLU? He has like the cool look with like the long gray dreadlocks and everything.
Yeah, sure. I
just want to call it. We already talked about it in the Green Lantern episode, but I just want to bring up real quick before we wrap up here. Okay, so point is, there's a lot. There are endless great moments with Static. We're going to spend here all day talking about them. Let's move on to kind of our final thoughts of all. The major impact, like where do we walk away with Static at the end of the day?
Yeah, Dragon, I feel like it's so important that Static and Static Shock, the TV show, have become such a fan favorite over the years. I feel like it's going to be one of those shows that stands up in the early 2000s, in the same way that something like Recess or Hey Arnold or any of those quality shows does, where the people that grew up with them now are going to want to share them with their kids, specifically because it had such a good and positive impact on them. And that's really what I think Static Shock is going to be like. Like, I feel like the TV show and the comic in general and the character, I really feel like the character is going to endure, Dragon. It really is. And I don't know. I think that rewatching this show, Dragon, I was just blown away at how good it was. I was just like, I haven't had such a good time researching something in a long time. Like, usually I'm just like, oh God, how many hours worth of stuff do you want me to watch? But in this case, Dragon, as you know, I was kind of like, even though I was on vacation and had some limits to what I could watch while I was on vacation, I tried to get in as much as I possibly could just for my own sheer joy of it all. Like, I really wanted to just dissect as much as I could from this character, because the character to me was just absolutely worth it. And frankly, I don't think we could have picked a better character to end out on DC month on. I really think that the series as a whole is just like, I strongly feel after watching all those episodes that this was just a damn good show, man. I don't know how else to put it. It was just really really just knew what it was doing, what it wanted to say. The character development was really good and on point, and I realized not every episode was a gem, but the gems that were there, man, they shine. They shine really brightly. That's basically all I got on the matter, Dragon.
No, you gotta be honest. Just in case you're curious, because it's been a while for you. You know, there's only legit, to my recollection, there's only 2 really legitimately bad episodes of Stack. The rest are just like, yeah, maybe not as good as the rest. But there's only 2 legitimately bad episodes. One's the one I can't remember with the hoop, the Hoop Squad. That one just might not be as good. That one I can't really remember, but there is one Tiki that I know is really bad. One really bad episode of Static.
Oh God.
It's, I believe it's called Attack of the Living Brain Puppets. It's really bad.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Like the worst bang baby of the whole. It's just this snooty girl running for the high school election. I think she's running against Richie. It's just stupid.
Oh God.
It's just really bad. Anyway, so to get to the positive notes, one thing I want to address too, because I think I forgot to mention earlier, so I might as well kind of start it here then and get into what I was going to say. The unfortunate thing with Static is that, Static did come back with the New 52, and again, because of that fan base, because everybody loves Static Shock.
The New 52 thing is a little bit on the BS side.
Yeah, that's the thing, because the problem is that there's not, I don't know what they done with the Rebirth, because I think they either they're bringing Static back, or they've had him back, but they're not doing it. The point is they're never doing enough with Static, so I think that point does remain. Because the thing is, Static was kind of lucky to get a book back, and to my recollection, it's been a while, folks. Because from what I understand, Static, he was brought back from the New 52, and Mark Bernardin, of course, Batman on Batman fame, he wrote on Static for a couple issues. Now I can't. Well, wait, no. It was Static or Mr. Terrific. I think it was Static. I'm pretty sure it was. He wrote a few issues of Static, but I could be wrong. Either that or Mr. Terrific. Point being, they both share the same sad story. Both did not last that long. And that's the thing. So Static, I mean, the cool thing that happened to was because of that fan base, because of the New 52, they found an excuse to, like, hey, let's do a Static Shock book. We hadn't done in a while. Because before that, and this is the tragedy, Bill, just as they were integrating Milestone Comics officially into the DC universe in comics, which they hadn't done, they did in animation, which now they're officially going to do in comics.
Mm-hmm.
As they did that, which again, now that still stands, and now Milestone is within DC last time I checked. Which again was like very historic because again they kind of disbanded years ago, so they were brought back and they kind of were integrated into the greater DC universe. And then of course Dwayne McDuffie passed away as that deal was really getting kicked off. And then so as they were kind of getting ready for all of that, and then from what I understand, I think they've been slowly bringing Static back in the Rebirth and everything of it all. So again, I think Static slowly come back, but let's I don't want to slow production on that, folks. We got to do more Static, man. We got to do more and kind of. We got to do it better. We got to do it right, and we got to do it better. We got to do it in a way that kind of captures all the kind of the fun nostalgia we're doing as we're reflecting fondly on Static Shock and reflecting fondly kind of what Static means. I think Static as a character deserves a little bit more,
Yeah, absolutely.
But getting back to where we're at and the impact of Static on the culture and everything now is that I think Static Shock the show holds a place of honor as not only the first, and again, this is like the first animated African American superhero series. Not only is it that, again, that's historic in itself. I'm pretty sure it's the first. I'm pretty sure it's the first because before that you had like characters appearing in shows. I don't know if they've ever had a headlining show like that.
Right.
Not only is that historic, but also again, the important thing we really want to stress is that not only is it that, it's also a great show. A great show that lasted for 4 seasons. And again, I want to put it to you this way, Tiki, because in case I've undersold it before. Technically, emphasis on technically, this is a feat that technically no other DCAU show has officially accomplished in that, like Batman the Animated Series, that's 3 seasons, and then it's revamped.
Sure.
Superman, 3 seasons. Justice League, if you want to be technical, you have Justice League, and then you have Unlimited, both for 2 seasons. No DCAU show has ever gone 4 seasons under the same name.
So Static really just kind of flew under the radar to become sort of like almost like the grand champion of the DCU in some ways.
Let me put it to you this way, Tiki. We're still talking about Batman to this day, and Batman. I mean, that's nothing's ever going to knock that off its perch. But I got to be honest, though, Static did it under the radar and kind of has almost as much longevity. T had so much longevity, it brought Static back in the comics and again, essentially kind of revived Milestone into the DC universe in comic form because Static was the thing that never went away when people thought Static. The common misconception that happens, again, I think you and I kind of done a decent enough job of kind of avoiding, but again, folks, to put it in perspective here, the common misconception that everybody makes, and this shows you the power of the series, is that people call him Static Shock. It's like how people call Batman Beyond, call Batman from Batman Beyond just Batman Beyond. That's the show's name. That's not the character's name.
Right.
It's just Static. And that just shows you the fondness people have for that series and how big that series was for redefining and reintroducing people to that character. They kind of revamped the comic after that, but then again, it kind of revived it. Again, a little later than it should have been revived, but it still revived and kept it in the consciousness for like decades after, at least 10 or up to 10 years, I guess. After it kind of went off the air, like 2014, I think is when the basically 2011 or 2014 is probably when Static kind of came back into prominence. I guess it's roughly 10 years from 2004 when the show ended. So that's roughly 10 years. Mm-hmm. So. On the whole, this is kind of a precursor to what we have now. With, just to give some modern examples, this show was a precursor to what we have now with shows like Black Lightning and Spider-Verse. Shows or movies like those.
By the way, congrats to for the Black Historic heroes of it all. I'd be remiss not to mention Into the Spider-Verse not winning Best Animated Film, Dragon, or winning Best Animated Film at the Oscars.
Yes, which is tremendous, and that movie is oh god, I can't wait.
Totally worth it. Honestly, should have been nominated for Best Picture, but I'll take what I can get.
Absolutely, I can't wait to rewatch that movie. It comes out this coming month in March, and I can't wait to get it and rewatch it like crazy because it's just so awesome. I'm hoping it has counter, but if it doesn't, we're gonna rectify it. Anyway, point being, but seriously, even that Black Lightning is a show I highly recommend to people. But again, this was the original Electric Hero. Static was to many people before this Black Lightning show has come around, which is really good and again honors that character. Don't get me wrong. Before Black Lightning came to prominence, Black Lightning was kind of a punchline because he was kind of shafted when it came to media adaptations of Black Lightning because they did the whole Black Vulcan thing in Super Friends. Remember Black Vulcan?
Vaguely.
And that's for a reason, Tiki. That's for a reason. So my point is Static, for all intents and purposes, because Black Lightning never kind of made in the promise. And there are reasons for it we'll get into once we talk about Black Lightning down the line. But Static was, for generations, he was the definitive electric-based hero to the DCAU generation, to anyone who's just kind of, especially if you were reading comics in the 90s and just weren't unfamiliar with characters like Black Lightning. He was your guy. He was the cool electric hero. And to me, it's so befitting that he's better than the last attempt at that with Super Friends with Black Vulcan. I love that it's so befitting that he did so much better than that character in animation. It was terrible then, but now it's fantastic. So Static, and again, lastly, Static, he's the soul of. I think it stands to reason that Static is kind of the soul of Milestone. There are a lot Icon's a great character. Some people might argue Icon, but let's face it, Static has the prominence and the state power. So Static is the soul of Milestone, and for all intents and purposes, at least in my opinion, he's Dwayne McDuffie's Spider-Man, and that character that ushered in more inclusiveness in comics and reflected more people who read those comics, the people who weren't represented who are now represented. I think that's one of Static's big kind of parting claims to fame, and the impact that's still there today. Like Dwayne McDuffie had this hope in life, TV. He had this hope that one day you'd have guys going to Comic-Con dressed like Static Shock, like white kids dressed like Static Shock because it didn't matter. And I'll be honest, I'm not sure if we're there yet, but you know what? We're close. We are.
Yeah, and you know what? That kind of Dragon, I feel like when you address that, this is going to be kind of a final thought on my end. When you address that, it feels like I feel like that could be mistaken as like a controversial political statement, and it shouldn't. And that is the power of Static Shock as a character, that I feel like Static Shock sort of, or I'm sorry, just Static in general, apologies. I feel Static in general kind of embodies that whole like we're not on sides. You know what I mean? And that's another goddamn thing that I love about Static. I really do. Is the the whole friendship with Richie. It just proves that like really it's not who you are. It's the whole classic analogy of judge one not by the color of his skin but by the contents of its character. Dragon, it goes both ways, and I really appreciate that a character like Static can find such such companionship with with Richie, even though he's so different from Richie. And I feel like that's one of the more endearing parts of Static's character. And apologies if this analogy keeps being brought up a little too much in the podcast, but Virgil's Richie, or I'm sorry, Virgil's Arnold-like quality is the fact that he just tries to help everyone. You know what I mean? He's just a good-hearted soul, just in general.
I love a character. I've lived Tiki. I'm going to try to end a little vaguely profound here, vaguely.
Okay, go for it, man.
You know what?
Swing for the fences. It's going to be a BlueDragonFive Grand Slam.
Oh God, folks. I've lived my life modeled after characters who try to do the right thing. Of course, Batman being the best example. I grew up like loving Batman as a character because he always did the right thing, because he tried to save everybody, that sort of quality. And I love that Virgil Hawkins fundamentally he's a good kid who always does the right thing. And again, he kind of usually an episode like from Static Shock would be kind of like he would learn this firsthand, just being kind of a young kid. Like again, to all the young kids watching, you're like all the 15-year-olds watching, like, what if I were in his shoes? What would I do? And that's kind of led that movement of like, yeah, if you're in his shoes, you'd hopefully do the right thing. It always kind of touched me in a way where like that's it always kind of shaped me as a kid. Like these heroes were heroes not because they could punch a guy in the face, but because they would try to save someone. They'd always do the right thing, even if it was hard, even if it was it was hard or detrimental to themselves, or like Static didn't always get a thank you sometimes. He would bicker with his sister. He'd miss out on things, but he did it because it was the right thing to do, and because his father and his mother they raised him, to do those right things. And I don't know, something really beautiful about that, something kind of pure about that character. I think is going to endure, and I think is just the reason that we're talking about him today, and the reason we're probably gonna be watching reruns of the show either after this or tomorrow or the next day. So,
absolutely. All right, folks, that's all for now. Until next time, when we talk about the heroes who made the leap from page to screen, showing us a world not simply black or white, but brimming with color as well as character.
With next year's installment of Black History Heroes.
I'm going to put a shock to your system.
To the beep beep, to the beep beep. Static Shock!
Static Shock!